Hi loves, I'm Q Bella. Today is Friday, January 21st, 2022. As some of you are aware, I am suffering from long haulers syndrome as a result of contracting COVID and pneumonia. I was in a car accident back in August of 2021, and a week later of being in the hospital, I contracted COVID and pneumonia. So this has been ongoing for 5 months. As you can see, I'm still on the oxygen. As my lungs continue to recover, I'm on a low flow of oxygen. I try to stay positive despite that. While I was in the hospital, I was there for 2 months. I had nurses and techs and just people coming in and just sharing my story with them, and they reminded me how amazing God is. And they often told me that I needed to share what He's done, share my testimony, and I ran from it. I have friends who remind me of the goodness of God and how my life is a miracle. And I never ever want to forget that my life is a miracle. And when I think about sharing my testimony, I often get a little shy in doing that. I know I say that with a huge smile on my face, but talking about what God has done for me, I can do that one-on-one with my friends. But to share with the world, as I plan on doing today, is something relatively new for me. He is just so amazing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my recovery routine, and it will tie into the message for today. So I pray and I ask the Holy Spirit to lead my conversation, for Him to be seen and for me to not be seen, to remove everything that's within me that is not of Him, and for the recipients of my testimony to get what they need to get as it applies to their life, for them to change their lives in a way that will be positive. I pray that for those of you who are listening to my testimony and listening to the brief word, that you will find yourself just grateful for life, and you will find yourself wanting to go to God a little bit more than you did prior to hearing about what He's done for me. I'm sorry, you're going to hear the beep. That is my portable oxygen concentrator. The more I talk, the less I inhale. And when it doesn't recognize that there is a breath, it's going to beep a little warning to let me know that it didn't register a breath during that time. So it will beep periodically. So my recovery routine includes one thing and one thing only. It includes going to God. Easy enough, right? My going to God will look different than what your going to God will look like. I will read my Bible. I will make sure that I pray. And in my prayers, I will pray for complete healing. Now, I've since added other things to my recovery routine, like changing my mindset. I spoke with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he reminded me of how powerful our mind is. And I do believe that by thinking positive thoughts, positive affirmations, going to God more consistently, not stressing over things as they come, I will see a difference in my healing. Just as of a few days ago, I stressed about everything. I'm stressing that it's been 5 months and I'm on oxygen, and I can breathe without having the oxygen on. However, because I know that I'm doing a long testimony, or a couple of minutes actually into my testimony, I didn't want to end up in a coughing fit. So I'm giving my lungs the extra help it needs to get through this session with you. So this morning I read Luke chapter 6, and right before reading, I prayed and I asked God to let me know in His word what it is that He needs me to know. And I kind of mumbled that. I still have baby faith. In fact, My relationship with him is relatively new, and every day it's a journey for me, but every day it's an exciting journey because I look forward to going to him. I look forward to hearing from him, and I make time throughout my day to hear from him. So a little background. Prior to the accident, I worked in education. I supported with the school system. I also work with a private nonprofit that I founded with my board members. We do feeding of the homeless. We've adopted an orphanage internationally. We've done outreach efforts, including toiletries and items for women and children escaping domestic violence. We've done so many things. And in addition to that as well, I also run a small business from home for the past 10 years. So when you talk about busy, I was busy. But nowhere in that, even though I was doing the works, doing God's work, nowhere in that was there time for a relationship with God. And that was lacking. I would mumble my prayers some days. And for the past year, though, a year prior to my accident, I would ask God for more time. In the shower, as I'm saying my prayer, getting ready for work, I would ask him to give me more time in the day so I can fit in a few minutes for him. It was so backwards that he wasn't getting the first fruit of my life. So when the accident happened, it took me a while before I realized the blessing and what he's done in giving me the chance to have time. The accident hit, COVID hit. I was laid in a hospital bed for weeks with the inability to go to work. I can't do any nonprofit work or anything outreach related. I had nothing but time. And sometimes God will work in our lives and we won't know what he's doing during the time that it's happening. But if we reflect on our lives, even in the midst of complete devastation, like what happened to me with the car accident, I'd lost the ability to walk. So I was bedbound for a couple of weeks. And then contracting COVID and being dependent on low flow of oxygen. I was up to 15 liters of oxygen at one point for a couple of days while I was hospitalized. But I've noticed the beauty in it. And it took me a couple of weeks to realize that God gave me time. He removed work. He removed all the works that I was doing with the nonprofit. He removed the work from my small business. And all I had was time with me and him. And I'm grateful for that because it's given me the foundation that I need in order to truly go to him the way that he deserves. So I do make time in my, what I call my recovery routine every day when I go to him. Sometimes it's in the mornings, first thing in the morning. If something happens and there's a distraction that comes in, my recovery routine might happen in the middle of the day, or it could happen at night. Now, there are a handful of times in the past 5 months since the accident that my recovery routine, my going to God time did not happen for that day, but I look forward to making that time up the next day. And I try not to go 2 days without having this happen. So in today's word, I read Luke chapter 6, again, verses 47, 48, and 49 resonated with me. I read the entire chapter, and I always suggest that you read chapters in entirety so that way you can get the full knowledge of what it is that you need to learn. So I prayed and I asked God to lead me to what he needed me to, and almost all the way through chapter 6, I was like, all right, there's nothing here. But then I got to the end and it's like, boom, this is what I need you to know. So I'm going to paraphrase a bit. In 47, 48, 49, it spoke about a man who is building a house, and he dug deep. In verse 48, he dug deep and he built his foundation on a rock. So when the floods came, the water is rising, his foundation was solid because his home was built on a rock, so it wasn't washed away. Then in verse 48, the last of 49, pardon me, it spoke about the man who built his home on earth. There was no foundation. So when the floods came, his home was washed away. And it took me a couple of minutes, and I was like, oh man, so I must be like the man who built his foundation on the rock, because I think of myself as that person, and the rock, the foundation, is God. It's the knowledge of God. It's accepting him in my life. It's going to him when the going's good, and it's going to him when the going is not so good. So my flood came in the way of the car accident that left me unable to walk and hospitalized. The flood for me came as COVID and pneumonia a week into the hospital stay that put me on oxygen and had my lungs and my body doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So those were my floods. And if I did not have the foundation in God, and when I tell you, as soon as I have a few friends and family members who knew what happened to me, the prayer circle started. And there were people praying for me, and they didn't even know who I was. But I thank God for my foundation in him and sending me a village of people that are believers, because they were able to intercede on my behalf when I wasn't able to pray for myself. So I'm likening myself to the man who built his foundation on the rock, not because I think there is any goodness within me, not because I feel that my life compares to anything that's great, but I liken myself to him because I know in whom I put my trust. I know that my foundation is God. And there are times I might think my foundation is not on a solid rock, but he is so solid. Like, he is the rock of my foundation of my entire life. And I'm so grateful for that. So when the floods came for me, when all the things that were destined to take my life happened, because God was my foundation, I wasn't washed away. I wasn't destroyed. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost, and I didn't lose my life, even though there were many days that I could have lost my life. There were many days when my oxygenation level was so low. There were many days that my body just stopped responding because it just had enough. There were days they couldn't find veins in my body because I was so dehydrated and my veins were just all collapsing. So I couldn't get the necessary medication that I needed to get in my body. And I had to exercise that faith. Now, my faith is 1,000,000 times smaller than that of a mustard seed. And a mustard seed's pretty small. And I know the Bible makes reference to faith the size of a mustard seed. But when I tell you on this day, Friday, January 21st, 2022, that my faith is 1,000,000 times smaller than that of a mustard seed, it really, really is. But somewhere in there, there's faith. Somewhere in there, there is knowledge of God. There's acceptance of God. There is my willingness to trust him, to go to him, even when it looks like there is no way out. Just knowing that my God has my back, it is enough for me to feel content. It's enough for me to feel faith. It's enough for me to know that come what may, my healing is here. My healing is coming. And I spoke with my friend a couple of days ago, maybe 3 days ago. He came by to visit, and we were talking about your mind and how your mind helps you and you can heal. We just have to have a positive mindset. There's plenty more in that. But having a positive mindset and thinking about your healing can manifest it. Like it tells you in the Bible of all the amazing things that we can do if we just believe. So I am grateful that I am part of the number of people that have that foundation in God. I am grateful that I have a village that has a foundation in God. And I'm here to share with you my life because it's nothing short of a miracle why I am still here. when we look at the x-ray results of my lungs up to last week, it showed that the infiltrates are all over my lungs. It shows that there is extensive tissue damage in my lungs. And this wasn't even coming from my normal pulmonologist. This was coming from something, still a side effect from the car accident from a couple of months ago. And I happened to do an x-ray and we saw that, and I cried like a baby. So this is how my faith is really like a baby faith, because the human side of me felt despair. And I kept thinking, 5 months later and I'm not healing the way I should be healing, Lord. But then I remembered how he spared my life, and it changed something within me, because every day is a gift. And I can either stay at home feeling like I'm just existing and being sad and upset that I am not able to do things the way that I used to be able to do, or I can thank him for sparing my life. I can see the miracle in my life in what he's done every day. I can see the fact that I can talk to you and breathe at the same time, which is something that I wasn't able to do when I just contracted COVID pneumonia. I had to choose between breathing and drinking Ensure from a straw, which is eating. And I had to choose to breathe for several days. I couldn't do both. And simply drinking, taking one gulp, took me probably 7-8 minutes, because I would have to breathe for a little bit, swallow, and then take a little bit of a sip, breathe a little bit, couple of minutes, and then swallow, breathe again, recover my breath. So I see the miracle. I have videos that I took from back in August and in September and in October when I was released home, and I see that God works miracles. So every day, starting today, I promise to share how amazing he is, to share just how he has blessed my life. And I promise to offer encouragement to anyone who is going through long hauler syndrome, or anyone who knows someone who is going through COVID. I can offer the tips of things that I've learned. I can offer prayer, words of encouragement, and it would be my pleasure. I just want to encourage you to know that God is amazing, and he has not left you. He has not forgotten you. You are loved. You are his, and you belong to him. And because you belong to him, he won't withhold any good thing from you. So I encourage you as I encourage myself. So going back to Luke chapter 6, it's very important that we have that foundation in God. We have to have that, and we have to know to whom we belong. And simply knowing him is not enough. Like, there are 3 things that we must do. We must go to him. That's one. We have to go to him. We have to hear what he has to say. We have to hear his word. Hearing his word can happen when you go to church, but hearing his word also happens when you search the Bible for yourself, just like with me today, going through Luke chapter 6 and hearing that, you have a foundation in God. So that's important. And the third thing that we must do is do what the word says. And it says that also in Luke chapter 6. We have to do those 3 things. We have to go to him, we have to hear his word, and we have to do what his word says. And I want to go a little step further in leaving quiet time throughout the day to hear his word. And it might come to you in the stillness, as if a voice where someone's talking to you. It might, his answer or his message might come to you through someone else that he's placed in your life to encourage you in that moment. I just want you to remember to have faith. Trust God. Let go of control, and your peace will return. Having a foundation with him is super important. Don't be like that man who had his foundation on the earth, because when troubles come, and they will come, if you don't have faith in God, you will be lost. If you don't have a way to go to him so he can strengthen you, you will be lost. I love you. I will be back with more. It was nice talking to you today.